Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and welcome to our look at the Deathbringer DK hero talents. This is the Frost and Blood shared tree, and it's the last DK tree as well. We've seen the other two already in videos on this channel. I'm going to try and make videos for all of the hero talent trees that have been revealed, but I haven't yet made videos on, which include the other 10 from this set and the 8 from last set. So those will be coming out hopefully over the next week or two as I get through them all. But let's start off by talking about what the Deathbringer is supposed to be about. So these are the emissaries of death empowered by the Shadowlands. Always a good sign there. Their physical strikes and abilities aim for their enemies' souls and vanquish them without mercy. So maybe we've got something like kind of the jailer gavel-y sort of theme here, soul theme. One thing I'd like to do with these videos going forward as well is we're going to start by reading the top node, and then we're going to go all the way to the bottom. We're going to read the bottom node, and then we'll read all the middle nodes, because I feel like that bottom node is so often integral to how these work that these last couple videos I've been doing, it feels like a lot of the time I'm in these middle nodes being like, oh, this will, depending on what the bottom node is, or knowing what I know about the bottom node is going to really change how this feels. So I think that's what we're going to try with these going forward. So let's start off with Reaper's Mark up at the top. This is a 2-rune ability that has a 1-minute cooldown that deals damage, applies Reaper's Mark. Reaper's Mark then for the next 12 seconds or 40 stacks, each time you do Shadow or Frost damage, add a stack of Reaper's Mark, and then it explodes, dealing damage per stack after reaching either 12 seconds or 40 stacks. It travels to an unmarked enemy nearby if the target dies, or explodes below 35% health when there are no enemies to travel to. This explosion cannot occur again on a target for 3 minutes, which, this part is a little weird to me, because, like, what if you're just fighting a single target boss, and then you hit it with this when it's below 35% health? Like, is it not going to be able to accrue the stacks then? Is it just going to instantly explode and go away? Or is that explosion just a bonus damage proc that can only occur once every 3 minutes on a single target, but it will continue to gain stacks and then explode? Like, are these two explosions separate, right? I don't know. That is something that reads a little bit weird to me. Okay, let's read the bottom ability. Exterminate. After Reaper's Mark explodes, your next Mirror Rend or Obliterate costs no rune and summons 2 scythes to strike your enemies. The first scythe strikes your target for physical damage and has a 15% chance to apply Reaper's Mark. The second scythe strikes all enemies around your target for Shadow Frost damage. So this sets up an interesting thing here where you could, in theory, just keep chaining Reaper's Marks, right? Like, your Reaper's Mark, 15% chance to get a new one. That expires, 15% chance to get a new one. That's going to be a very big jackpot if you can just keep rolling it until you get back to your 1-minute cooldown of your next one. Very unlikely, obviously, for that to happen, but some of these other nodes will increase the chances of that. Okay, let's go with Wave of Souls up next. That is Reaper's Mark unleashes a dark wave towards your target and back, dealing Shadow Frost damage both ways to all enemies caught in its path. Wave of Souls critical strikes cause enemies to take 5% increased Shadow Frost damage for 15 seconds, stacking up to 2 times, and the wave back is always a critical strike. So this introduces some strange scaling here. I mean, crit, this mostly is still crit scaling, right? Like, when you think of a passive like this, there is a part of this that's like, hey, I don't actually scale with crit, which is the guaranteed crit on the way back, but the part where you're going to get 5% increased Shadow Frost damage if you crit on the way there is still going to make it so that crit scales really... Like, this will increase the value of crit for both Blood and Frost DKs, for DPS at least. Frost DK often likes crit anyways, so that seems something that will be really quite good for the Frost DK kind of burst window, because, enemies... Not your primary target, but also anything between you and your primary target, which is a melee DPS is a little bit weird, because usually there's not much between you and your primary target, but maybe this will add a little bit of playstyle where you're trying to target something at max melee range on the other side of the pack from you. Hopefully it's just kind of nice, and it still works. Like, even if all the mobs are kind of bunched up, if you're targeting any of them, the wave hits all of them twice. That would be nice, instead of having to, like, super min-max it to always be targeting the farthest enemy, or, like, have an enemy a couple of yards away from the others. That would be a little bit annoying, but... yeah, either way, this seems like it'll be pretty powerful for enhancing the Frost DK burst window, which, again, on a 1-minute cooldown here, so you can have this for every breath, you can have this for every Frostworm Fury, right? You can have this going pretty often. Blood Fever. says if your blood plague has a chance to deal 30% increased damage as Shadow Frost, and your frost fever has a 30% chance to deal increased damage as Shadow Frost if you're frost. So basically your diseases do 30% more damage. The Shadow Frost portion of this is not super relevant unless it gives you 2 stacks of Reaper's Mark, because either Shadow or Frost, which is what Blood Plague and Frost Fever are respectively, should already be applying 1 stack there. So I don't think that changes too much. Like the fact that it's Shadow Frost, I don't think matters at least yet. But it will matter for Bind in Darkness, which says Shadow Frost damage applies double stacks to Reaper's Mark. There it is, the effect that I was just mentioning. And quadruple stacks when it is a critical strike. And Blood Boil deals Shadow Frost damage. Rime-empowered Howling Blasts deal Shadow Frost damage as well. So now, not only do 30% of your disease ticks apply double stacks with the chance for quadruple stacks if they crit, but also all your Blood Boils, all your Howling Blasts will do that as well. Well, all your Rime-empowered Howling Blasts, which I believe are the only ones you press outside of like 1 in the opener for Frost, is, that's pretty good. Again, this is further crit scaling as well, right? Quadruple stacks on a crit is extra value for your crits, because now your crits are giving you more Reaper's Mark, more explosion damage there. Definitely something that, particularly like late in an expansion, as you start getting more stats, this might be one of those trees that kind of scales up towards the end of the expansion, and then at the start of the new expansion is a little bit weaker again. And yeah, this might be like the 11.3 Frost DK, they played this instead of Rider of the Apocalypse, and 12.3, that kind of stuff, as written, maybe. Okay. Shuttering Soul says Reaper's Mark explosion causes a piece of the target's soul to tear away and spiral outwards, dealing 10% of the explosion's damage to enemies it passes through. Enemies hit by this effect deal 5% reduced physical damage to you for 10 seconds. So there's a little bit of a tankiness side of things. Very unlikely for this to matter in PvE for Frost DKs pretty much ever. But for Blood DKs, it's a little bit nice to get a physical damage reduction from enemies. Often as a Blood DK, unlike a lot of other tanks, physical damage is generally the scariest type of damage for Blood DKs, because you're just so resilient to most magic damage effects because of the way your kit works and the amount of self-healing you have, and the way that those magic damage effects are balanced to not kill Prot Warriors as much. So that is nice, and it's going to be giving you effectively, after you press your Reaper's Mark, right, like 12 seconds after the opener, you're going to get a 5% physical DR for 10 seconds. Pretty good timing for Blood DK, right? Like that might be as your first Vamp Blood, your first rune weapon is expiring. So actually a reasonable chunk of little value there for Blood DK. Over here we have Grim Reaper. Reaper's Mark explosion deals up to 30% increased damage based on your target's missing health, and applies Soul Reaper to targets below 35% health. Nice. Extra damage, extra resource. Always good to see there. A little bit of Execute. Execute's always good too. All right, now we have choice nodes the rest of the way through. Death's Bargain is an option that says, when you suffer a damaging effect equal to 25% of your maximum HP, you instantly cast a half effectiveness Death Pact. This can only occur once every 2 minutes. When Reaper's Mark explodes, the cooldowns of this effect and Death Pact are reduced by 5 seconds. So, unless you're chaining off here, we're probably talking about 10 seconds of CDR, 15 every 2 minutes on this. But still, a 2 minute, it's not a cheat death, right? It's not going to protect you from 100 hits of 5% healthier damage. But, you take a big hit, you cast a big Death Pact on yourself. Sometimes that's going to be annoying, right? Sometimes that heal absorb is going to be annoying, but often that's going to be potentially life-saving. So I think this is a nice effect especially for Frost DKs. For Blood DKs, this is going to proc on the first auto attack that a heroic or mythic boss does to you, or a auto attack from a normal dungeon enemy in a +10 or higher or something, or +3 or higher with the new key level system. It's going to proc your Death Bargain, so maybe a little bit less exciting for Blood DK, but for Frost DK, I think this is a powerful defensive effect. The other option here is Rune Carved Plates. Each rune you spend reduces the magic damage you take by 2%, and each rune generated reduces the physical damage you take by 2% for 5 seconds, up to 5 times. Now, I think you generate a rune every 5 seconds, like baseline. You can chain this together, so we could be looking at, if this works, if this is just a buff you can maintain, 5 seconds is like a little bit short, where maybe it's going to fall off every now and then, but 10% magic, 10% Fizz DR, this seems like a hugely powerful option especially for Blood DK. For Frost DK, it's also just really strong because it's just passive DR. Death's Bargain is, I think, probably also an option for Frost DK depending on the situation, but Rune Carved Plates just seems like a boatload of DR for a node like this. That seems really default for Blood Decay, and probably also default for Frost Decay, because this just seems like a lot of value. Over here, we have Swift End and Painful Death. Swift End says Reaper's Mark's cost is reduced by 1 rune, and its cooldown is reduced by 50%. 50% cooldown reduction on this is huge, right? Now we're talking about pressing Reaper's Mark every 30 seconds, which means that you're getting this explosion, you're getting this Shuttering Soul effect, you're getting these Wave of Souls, which is, causing enemies to take 5% to 10% increased Shadow Frost damage from you. Getting that 15 seconds every 30 instead of 15 seconds every minute is huge. That is a tremendous amount of, that's double the value basically, right? So that's big. Obviously, you'd still get it in your cooldowns, even on the longer cooldown, so it's maybe a little bit less exciting for that reason, but still, I think this is a very, very powerful node. The other option is a little bit more RNG here. Painful Death says Reaper's Mark now explodes at 50 stacks, and the first Scythe of Exterminate has a 100% increased chance to apply Reaper's Mark. Now, that's 100% increased, which I assume means going from 15 to 30%. So my guess is that the Swift End side of this is more powerful, because you're getting twice as many natural, like, hard cast Reaper's Marks, whereas Painful Death is going to be giving you twice as many free Reaper's Marks off of Exterminate, but the base rate of that was a lot lower, right? 15% of the time you were getting that, instead of getting a full 50% off the cooldown. So I think Swift End is going to be the default one here, but I could be wrong about that, especially if there's value in getting up to 50 instead of 40 stacks. Maybe you're getting a lot more damage out of that somehow. Not sure. In the next spot here, we have another choice node between Dark Talons, which says, while Icy Talons is active, your Runic Power spending abilities deal Shadow Frost damage. For those who don't know, Icy Talons is when you spend Runic Power. You get like an attack speed thing, I think. And they've made it so it's basically just full uptime if you're not, griefing your rotation. And so your Runic Power spending abilities deal Shadow Frost damage. That's big, right? That ties in with Bind in Darkness, so you're getting more Reaper's Mark stacks out of those. And there's also Mararend and Heartstrike have 20% chance to increase the maximum stacks of an active Icy Talons by 1 up to twice. So you can get more attack speed, increasing the maximum stacks of it. Very strange, but, more attack speed, cool. And Frost has the same effect on consuming Killing Machine or Rhyme, which, for both of these, I mean, Frost, you should be able to maintain your Icy Talons. I think they made it go from like 6 seconds to 10 seconds, I think, at some point this expansion. And ever since that happened, I think it's pretty hard to drop your Icy Talons. So this should just be more attack speed for both specs. Powerful node, and then, of course, more stacks on your Reaper's Mark due to the Shadow Frost damage here. The other option is Wither Away, which says Blood Plague deals its damage in half the duration, and the second Scythe of Exterminate applies Blood Plague. So this is basically going to be giving you double Blood Plague, right? Double damage of Blood Plague. Deal damage in half the duration means it's also going to be healing you twice as fast, too. So Blood Plague healing is pretty minuscule for Blood Decay, but it's still, double the damage of Blood Plague. Blood Plague is not a huge source of your damage either, but it's some of it. And the second Scythe of Exterminate applying Blood Plague, it's also not a big deal, because you're pressing Blood Boil on CD, and that's applying Blood Plague to everything. So, But ticking more often does mean that you're going to get more Bind in Darkness. Actually, you're gonna get more stacks of Reaper's Mark. You're gonna get more of these Blood Fever procs that do Shadow Frost damage that give you double stacks. So I don't know. I mean, that has some value. The other option is Frost, which says Frost Fever deals its damage in half the duration, and the second Scythe of Exterminate applies Frost Fever. I'm not as familiar with Frost uptime on Frost Fever, but I assume that you're getting enough Rhyme procs that you're also going to be able to maintain full uptime pretty easily with this. So you're going to be doing double damage off Frost Fever. I guess my initial guess is probably the auto attack frequency is going to be the the Dark Talons side of things is probably going to be better. Not just because you're going to be attacking more often, but also getting the Shadow Frost damage on your Runic Power spending abilities is probably going to be nice for amping up your Reaper's Mark. But I'm not sure. This is pretty clearly a simulation question of which these is going to be worth more damage. And finally, we have either Death's Messenger or Expelling. Death's Messenger reduces the cooldowns of Lichborn and Raised Dead by 30 seconds. Raised Dead, for both specs, I believe, is a 2-minute cooldown, 1-minute uptime. So this would be 30 seconds less cooldown, more uptime on having a Ghoul. Ghoul does a little bit of damage, doesn't do too much else. I guess it does do Enfeeble if you're a Blood Decay as well, which does reduce damage taken from the mobs that it hits, but it's not really that big of a deal usually. And Lichborn, which you talent into being like a 10% DR or something. Also, nice little bit of value. Not one of your powerful defensives or anything like that, but it's something. The other option says, when an enemy deals direct damage to your AMS, their cast speed is reduced by 10% for 6 seconds. Very unlikely to be something that you use in PvE content. It's hard to imagine this being something that, like in PvE content, what enemies are dealing direct damage to you into your AMS? You're just going to let like a cast go off in an M+ or something, and then you're reducing their cast speed by 10% for 6 seconds. So, you know, their next 3-second cast is a 3.3-second cast. We did it. I don't know. That seems extremely suspicious. Seems like a PvP kind of node there, but yeah, I think you're just going to take that messenger and get a little bit of value out of it here and there. On that node, certainly not one of the powerhouse nodes of this tree. Overall, I would say that I think this tree is reasonably exciting. I don't think it lives up quite to the levels of like fantasy and awesomeness of the Rider of the Apocalypse one that I looked at yesterday, but Deathbringer certainly seems quite good. This seems like a solid tree. It doesn't seem like it's making you do anything annoying. It seems like it's giving you some good little things to play around that, you know, you'll know if you're a Deathbringer DK, you'll have like 1 or 2 extra little min-maxes you can do, but you don't have something that's going to punish you if you don't do it, which I think is something that's really important to these hero talent trees, is that they don't give you like these side quests that are punishing if you fail them, but they give you little things where it's like, oh, this is a neat little interaction, but you know, if I'm a more casual player and I'm just playing the game, I don't really need to read this tree too much, right? Like, I can take Reaper's Mark and I can press it on cooldown and I can be getting 90% of the way to this tree doing everything it's supposed to do, and that is, I think, important for these hero talent trees, to not make the game too like messy and bloated and complicated. So overall, I would give this tree a pretty good rating. I don't think it's one of the, you know, standout best ones that they've shown or anything like that, but I do think it's pretty cool, and yeah, I'd be reasonably excited. I mean, I'm currently maining a Blood DK. I main a new tank every tier these days, so not sure that I'll play that in the future, but I'm certainly more excited about playing this than I am playing Sand Lane from that tree's reveal. So yeah, wish I could play Rider of the Apocalypse though. That thing is so sweet. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.